Hey everyone,
Hey guys.
welcome to another Travel Therapy Mentor video. Tonight we're going to be recapping our road trip. We just got back to Virginia a few days ago. We were on the road for about 6 weeks traveling in our van. Hopefully you guys saw that video of our tour of our van that we were traveling in. But we're going to talk about the road trip, some of the highlights, some things we learned again. Just like every year, we constantly refine this process. This is our third long road trip, and each time it gets a little better. So hopefully we can learn a little bit more, modify next year, and be even better. Whitney's going to introduce us, and I'm going to get this video shared in a few different groups.
All right, hey everybody, my name is Whitney Aiken.
And I'm Jared Kazaza.
And we're both traveling doctors of physical therapy, and many of you guys may know us as the faces behind Travel Therapy Mentor. A lot of you guys probably have tuned in the past for our videos. We do them about every other week or so. We've been doing them for a few years now, and we try to bring you different information, different topics about travel therapy. Sometimes we'll talk about our own adventures. Road trips are a big part of being a travel therapist. Quite often as travel therapists, we move all across the country to go to jobs or on our time off between jobs. So for Jared and I, we've only ever done like really major road trips on our time off between jobs. So hopefully you guys will be entertained learning a little bit more about our road trip. Think of some places you guys might want to visit, and also help you with some logistics about traveling and taking a road trip. So anyway, as Jared gets our video shared in a couple groups so more people can join us live, those of you guys that are on live tonight, we'd love if you'd say hello in the comments. I see Nick already said hello. Hi, Nick.
Also, let us know if everything looks normal. We tried to do this video just a minute ago, and it was like saying that I need to be rotated the phone, so there might be some issues, but hopefully it's
It looked like Facebook Live had a little bit of a new platform, like they changed the settings just a little bit. So let us know if everything looks okay. And hey, Molly, thanks for joining. And then shout out to those of you guys that will watch later on the replay if you just want to type replay in the comments, and shout out to those of you guys that will listen later on our podcast. I know a lot of you guys prefer to go podcast format instead of the Facebook Live, but we appreciate all of you. Thanks for joining. So as Jared mentioned, we just got back home to Virginia a couple days ago. We were on the road for almost 6 weeks. We traveled from Virginia in our minivan across the country to Las Vegas. We went to Las Vegas for the Travelers Conference, which for those of you guys that don't know about the Travelers Conference, it's a conference they have every year normally, except they had to cancel it for COVID last year, for healthcare travelers. So it's a lot of like travel nurses, but it's all healthcare disciplines that can travel, therapists, radiology, techs, all that kind of stuff. They all go. So anybody who's watching this, if you're either interested in travel healthcare or you're already a traveler, you're welcome to go to the Travelers Conference. This was our second time going. The first time was in 2019, and it was really neat for us to be able to drive across the country there and back rather than fly out, because we hadn't really spent much time like out west or in the Midwest. When we were working full-time as travel therapists, as many of you guys may know if you've listened to our videos before, we only ever worked on the East Coast. So we only ever drove as far as like Maine on the north and maybe like South Carolina, Georgia on the south, just along the East Coast. So these road trips have been our only way that we've ever seen anything out west, and they've been really awesome.
Yeah, so like I said, this was our third trip. The first one was only about 4 weeks with with about 5 days of that being in Vegas, and we felt like that was pretty rushed. So Virginia to Vegas, 5 days there and then back. We probably drove about 4,000 or 5,000 miles, and felt pretty rushed to us. So,
which is funny because a lot of people, when they're trying to get across the country for just like a contract, they only take 2, 3, 4 days to get across, and of course they're just kind of booking it to their contract. We wanted to spend more time stopping and doing things.
Yeah, so we were trying to visit the major cities, meet up with some people that we know along the way, also trying to hit most of the national parks in the country. So yeah, the first trip, it was pretty rushed. The second trip, we decided to do 8 weeks. We took a more northern route, went all the way over to Washington, down the West Coast, and then back across the bottom of the country, and that was a little too long. So that was about 12,000 miles of driving, and by the end of it, we were very tired. So this time, like I said, we continued to refine our process, and this time it was about 6 weeks and somewhere in the middle in terms of driving. We actually drove about 7,180 miles. So yeah, right between the two trips. And this was probably, I would say, the best trip that we've taken.
Yeah, especially since it was our second year traveling in the minivan and kind of camping, we definitely refined a lot of that process. And for those of you guys that followed along, it also went a lot better because we had access to more frequent showers. We had a Planet Fitness membership and were able to go and shower the days that we were camping. Like usually it was not more than like 1 to maybe 2 days that we had to go without a shower sometimes. Whereas last year with COVID, a lot of the gyms were closed, a lot of the showers were closed, and that made for traveling for 8 weeks in a van like really rough last year. And by the end of last year's trip, I was really kind of done with it. I felt a little bit that way this time by the end of 6 weeks. So we always have like a lot of fun on the beginning half of the trip, especially like leading up to Vegas. This year for TravCon, like we did a ton of cool stuff on the way out to Vegas. But then kind of after Vegas, we were just a little bit like tired, and like Vegas was like big party. Like it's a conference, but it's definitely a big party.
Yeah.
And so the second half of the trip, we just weren't really as motivated to like do as much. We had lost some of that like beginning energy. So we talked about maybe next year. We're not sure what next year's road trip is going to look like, but we're planning on doing some type of road trip to Vegas and back. And we were talking about maybe just putting all of the cool stuff in the beginning, and then after Vegas, just kind of like making it real quick as possible back to Virginia, like 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, and so the way we structure these trips too, we've kind of structured all of them like this. It's normally starting the beginning of September, sometime around there, or last year, the longer trip, we actually started in August. But since it's like still warmer months, we take the northern route to get out there. And then we take the southern route back when it's cooling down some. So that worked out really well last year because we went through like Wyoming and Montana and some colder states when it was still pretty warm. It was near the end of August. Whereas if we had done that on the end of the trip, it would have been really cold. It was like mid to late September and it starts getting cold. The leaves start changing up there. So yeah, we planned it like that. And because of the way we plan it, kind of around the weather, a lot of the cool national parks and things are more in the northern part of the country. And so we do a ton of hiking and things to get out to Vegas. And then on the way back, it's more cities and kind of just less exciting for us.
Yeah, and I mean, with the weather, it's been really important, especially in the van, because we don't have any air conditioning control, heat or air conditioning when we're sleeping at night in the van, unless we just open the windows, which you can do in some places, but some places where there's bugs and stuff, you can't. So it really helps for sleeping at night in the van if we stay in moderate temperatures, and it also helps for hiking and doing outdoor stuff because like one of our last stops, our last couple of stops on the trip, which were toward the end of or beginning of October, were Dallas and New Orleans, and it's really hot in Dallas and New Orleans, and it was still really hot in both those places in October, but if we'd gone there at the beginning of September, it would have been extra hot. So yeah, overall, like the way we've planned it has worked out really well weather-wise. I think just, 6 or so weeks on the road can just be a long time.
Yeah, it's still a lot of fun, and we're still learning every time, but I think we'll probably do at least one more of these trips, hopefully many more. But there's still a lot that we want to see, but we saw a good chunk of the country just in 3 long trips now.
Absolutely. So this year, as Jared mentioned, we drove over 7,000 miles. We went through about 18 states, some of which we'd already been to. We went to 3 new states that we hadn't been to before, which were Iowa, Nebraska, and Louisiana. And that has put us now at having gone to 49 states. So we've been to every state in the lower, the continental U.S., and we've been to Hawaii. The only place we have not been is Alaska. And most of these states were ticked off during our cross-country road trips. So we hit like a ton of new states last year, 8 weeks on the road. A lot of the northern states we'd never been to. And again, we hit a few new ones this time. So lots of driving, lots of cool things, like just a huge variety of stuff. And even the places that we went, like Iowa, Nebraska, like these places that might seem a little more boring, were really interesting to us because we've never been there before. So it was really cool to be able to go to those places.
Yeah, so all combined now, I think we're at about 18 weeks on the road for these trips. And over 30 states or so we went to just on these trips. And we've really enjoyed it because, like Whitney said, we hadn't seen that much of the country. Mostly we're on the East Coast. There's still a lot of the country we wanted to see before we settled down. We didn't necessarily want to work and, just choose a state and work there for a long period of time. So the road trip's been kind of perfect. Taking the time to go to the national parks, hit the highlights, visit people. It's been a lot of fun.
And there's so many people that wouldn't otherwise have this opportunity except for us travel therapists, travel healthcare people. We get to see so much, and we have tons of friends who are fellow travelers who are also like trying to get to all 50 states. And most of your friends and family that have pretty regular jobs, they don't have the opportunity to take these long road trips. Even if they plan a trip across the country. They might just have to fly there, or they might only have, 10 days or at max 2 weeks off from work to be able to go and do these things. So we're really in a very fortunate position as travelers to be able to do these kind of trips. So if you guys have the opportunity, whether it's just, allowing a few extra days to give yourself a good week road trip on the way to a contract, or if you have the chance to take off a few weeks between contracts, or months like we do, highly recommend it, because you'll see some really cool stuff. And just, it also, I think it restores a little bit of our faith in humanity, because sometimes, like, if you watch the news and stuff and you see people arguing on the internet, you just feel like, oh gosh, everybody's like, the world is a crazy place and everything's terrible. But to be honest, like, when you travel to these places and you stop at the gas stations and you eat dinner and you meet the people in the local area, you're like, wow, they're nice. They're just normal people like we are. And there's nice people all over the country. And you're like, okay, maybe the world's not so bad.
Yeah, it's nice to be disconnected from the internet a little bit, because people in real life are great people. People on the internet are not very good people.
Yeah, we've met so many nice people in our travels and just really enjoyed seeing the hospitality. Like we're from the South, and so you think like, oh, Southern hospitality, but there's really a lot of hospitality all over the country, a lot of nice people. Of course, you meet some bad people, but we've really enjoyed going through different parts of the country, meeting new people.
Yep.
So yeah, like I said, we drove through 18 states, over 7,000 miles. We went to 11 national parks on this trip. A few of them we had already been to, and we went back to spend more time there. So I'll tell you the ones that we went to this time. After having gone to these ones on this trip, we're now at 48 national parks out of about 63. The funny thing about national parks, if you Google it, like, there's certain people that have added up the list, and it's changing all the time because they're adding new ones. Things that used to be just like national monuments, they'll change to national parks. So like this year, there were 2 new ones that weren't even national parks last year when we went on our trip. But anyway, yeah, by like most people's definition, there's like 63, and we've been to 48 of them now.
Yeah. Most of the ones in the lower 48, we're going to try to hit the rest of them in the next year or so. And then there's a ton in Alaska, and then there's a couple that are outside, like a little harder to get to, in the Virgin Islands and in Samoa, which is somewhere we've never been.
Which is interesting because those are territories, not states. So they have designated national parks in some of the territories, which is interesting. But we went to all the ones in Hawaii when we were there, and we're really hoping to make it to Alaska next year, and then do the national parks there. So this time we went to New River Gorge National Park, which is in West Virginia, which is actually really close to where we're from in Virginia. It was only like 2 or 3 hours away. That was really cool. That was not previously a national park. So highly recommend that one. It's really beautiful, especially if you could get there in the fall. Then we went to Indiana Dunes, which is just at the very northernmost part of Indiana. It's on the Great Lakes. It's on Lake Michigan. So it's kind of really close to like Chicago. But that was pretty cool. It wasn't really like our favorite national park by any means. It's kind of like sand dunes and just a huge lake, but definitely cool to see. Then we went to one of our new favorites, which was Rocky Mountain National Park out in Colorado. That has quickly moved up to like our top 5 favorite national parks. It was really beautiful.
Yeah, Rocky Mountain National Park, it reminded us a little bit of a few national parks we've been to in the past. It's kind of like Glacier National Park, in that it has a road that goes through the park and has a lot of awesome overlooks. You can see a lot of mountains from that road, which is nice for people that are not so into hiking. And then it also reminds us a little bit of like the Grand Tetons. There's a lot of glaciers and mountains that are beautiful, just like the Tetons. So that is definitely in our top 5.
Yeah, so that was a huge highlight of our trip. And luckily we got to spend 2 full days at Rocky Mountain National Park. Those were some of our favorite hikes that we've done. Definitely right up there with our favorite national parks. I'd say right now our top 5 of all time that we've been to, not on this trip, because only 1 or 2 of them were on this trip, but we really still love North Cascades in Washington State. We love Glacier in Montana, Yosemite in California,
Grand
Tetons in Wyoming, and Rocky Mountain National Park. And then 6th would be Zion, which is another one that we went to on this trip for the second time. We'd been to Zion one other time, but we didn't get to do that much the first time.
Yep, we went to Black Canyon of the Gunnison for the first time. That was in Colorado.
And we'd never heard of that one.
Yeah, we'd never heard of that before just a few months ago. And that was a cool park. It was, the canyon is really unique there. It's not really what we've been to a lot of canyons, and I was kind of expecting it to be like that, but the way the river cut through there is unique. It's like some of the walls are just straight down. There's like these sheer 2,000-foot drops that are really cool to see.
Yeah, unfortunately, there wasn't really as much like hiking there necessarily because you need like a wilderness permit to go all the way down into the canyon because it's so steep. But it was really cool just to see from the overlooks, and that's in Colorado. And then we went to 3 of the ones in Utah, and those were Arches, Canyonlands, and Zion. The Utah National Parks are great. There's 5 of them, so I highly recommend if you get a chance just to do it like a Utah road trip, just you could hit all 5. They're really awesome. We loved going back to Zion this time. We did the Angel's Landing hike and the Narrows hike, which are 2 like really iconic, very well-known hikes, very unique. Those were really enjoyable. If you're afraid of heights, Angel's Landing was scary, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So it's definitely doable. And then the Narrows is a really neat experience because you're wading through the river there. So look that one up if you're not familiar with those hikes. But Zion is definitely a really cool place. And it's not that far from Vegas. So if you're ever like doing a trip to Vegas or something, you can really get to that one pretty easily. It's only a couple hours from there.
Yeah, and Arches and Zion, those were 2 parks that we'd been to in the past, and we stopped there just to do more. Whereas Canyonlands, we actually didn't make it to a couple years ago, so this was our first time there. And Canyonlands was also a really cool park. It was reminded me a lot of the Grand Canyon, but much less busy.
Mm-hmm. Then we also went to one called Great Basin, which we'd never really heard of. It's not that well known. It's actually in northern Nevada, but it doesn't look like Nevada. It was actually really cold up there. That was one of our coldest nights on the trip in northern Nevada. It was more or less Utah. It's basically still part of Utah. It's just right over the line.
It was in the 30s, and we were staying at about 8,000 feet of elevation, which I don't know about you, but thinking about Nevada, I think of desert and flat and like sea level. But in northern Nevada, there's a lot of mountains, and actually we hiked to one of the highest points. I think it's the second highest point in Nevada, and it was over 13,000 feet. So we had no idea that there was mountains like that in Nevada, but that was a really awesome place to visit.
And it ended up being like one of the harder hikes we've ever done. I was astonished. I was like, how are we in Nevada right now? I did not think we were going to make it on that hike.
Yeah, I think that was called Wheeler Peak, right?
Mm-hmm. It was really tough.
That was a hard hike.
That was even harder than the hikes we did in Colorado. Like the ones that we did, obviously there are harder ones in Colorado.
Maybe.
But
it was up there.
It was tough. So then we went back to the Grand Canyon after Vegas. We'd never been to the North Rim, so we stopped at the North Rim, which was quite different than the South Rim. Most people go to the South Rim. And I would say, in general, if it's going to be your first time ever at the Grand Canyon, probably the South Rim is the place to go. But the North Rim was neat. It was higher elevation. It was more like Colorado. Like there was a lot more trees and forest, and the colors were changing, and it was very pretty, and it was cold. Whereas like the South Rim, it was more desert. So yeah, but awesome views. I mean, you can't go wrong with the Grand Canyon. Pretty epic, right? And then we went to a place called Mesa Verde National Park, which is in Colorado. That one is well known for the cliff dwellings, which are where these ancient Pueblo people built homes into the side of the cliff. And they built them out of rocks, and they created basically cement with dirt and other natural sources. And these houses, like these structures, are still there because they were kind of protected by the cliffs, and they've lasted for hundreds of years. They're almost 1,000 years old. Of course, they're a little bit deconstructed now, but that was really interesting to see these homes that are still there.
Yeah, some of them are really big too. Like there's, you think of a house as being like a small dwelling, and there were some smaller ones, but there's some places there that they estimate that over 100 people lived in. So they built these big dwellings that were awesome to see.
Yep. And then the last national park we went to on the road trip was on the way back in Kentucky. That was called Mammoth Cave National Park. Again, we had never heard of that before, but it's actually the longest cave system known in the world. They've discovered over...
It's 420 miles they've discovered
420
so far.
miles.
But they think that it's probably about an 800 or 900 mile cave, and they're still exploring it.
And so they used to think that like there were different caves in the same region, but then they were finding that like the explorers were finding that they're actually all connected. So it's this like massive cave system. So we've been in some caves before, but it was kind of cool to see. They have 14 different tours that you can do to see like different parts of the cave. So that was pretty neat. And I do want to point out that if you guys are planning any kind of road trips to any national parks this year or next year, you really need to read about each park in advance, because unfortunately, because of COVID, they are all having new rules. I think with things like Mammoth Cave and like Mesa Verde, you probably always had to book tours in advance because they're guided tours with the rangers, but some of them you're required to get advance tickets, advanced reservations, and we kind of got screwed on a couple of those this year that we did not know you had to do that. We almost didn't get to go to Rocky Mountain National Park because
Yeah.
they start the reservation system like 2 months in advance, like 60 days in advance. And literally people sign on like at the exact time that it opens up, like 5 p.m. on the dot. And by 5:05, the tickets are gone. And we just got lucky with Rocky Mountain because they reserved 25% of the tickets for the day before. And so we found out about this about 5 or 6 days in advance. So then the day before, we were sitting on our laptops, both of us, at the same time at 5 o'clock on the dot and click, click, click to try to get the tickets.
Yeah, and you might think like, oh, wow, you don't need to sit there right at 5, but the tickets sold out in 1 minute.
Yeah.
Both days, they sold out in 1 minute.
Less than 5 minutes, for sure. By 5:05, they were gone.
Yeah.
So you really have to do in advance. I know for sure, like Glacier, I think, is still doing that. Probably Yosemite. A lot of them are still doing that. Mammoth Cave, like I said, you have to have the guided tour. Mesa Verde, we actually didn't get to do the guided tour because we missed the tickets and we didn't get lucky like we did with Rocky Mountain. So we only saw the cliff dwellings from like the overlooks. We didn't get to go inside of them, unfortunately. So make sure to do your advanced research and find out if you need advanced reservations like months in advance of your trip.
Yep.
But overall, yeah, I mean, we've seen, again, 48 national parks. Our national parks are pretty cool. But I will say one thing that's cool that we've started to see is we were kind of focused on going to all the national parks, right? Like check them off your list, go to these cool places. We went to a couple places that were not national parks this trip, and they were incredible. And we were like, there's still so much more to see. Like, okay, we've been to all the national parks in Colorado, right? Well, this time our friends, we had like a couple extra days, and they were like, oh, go to this area of Colorado. It's not a national park, but it's gorgeous. And it was so pretty. And we lucked out. We were there kind of like right when the leaves were starting to change. We went to a place called Silverton and Ouray, 2 different little mountain towns. So pretty. We also went to somewhere else that wasn't a national park. We went to Page, Arizona, and saw Horseshoe Bend and Antelope Canyon. And those were just incredible, and they're not national parks. So even though we've traveled to what seems like everywhere, like we've been everywhere, there's still so much more to see, and our country's so beautiful.
Yeah, and we've said this before, but we've been to 31 countries now. We've spent a ton of time in Asia and Europe, and still our favorite trips are just driving around the U.S. There's so much to see. The national parks are amazing. There's so many little towns. The people are very friendly. We've really enjoyed traveling around the U.S.
Yeah, and there's just something special about the way that we're able to travel in the U.S. because you don't need any type of pass really to get from state to state, whereas in other countries, you might need to have your passport and go through customs and that sort of thing, but you can just get in your car and drive. Everyone's going to speak English. It's all going to be the same. Of course, there are certain places that you need like your vaccine card at this point. The only place we went that was like that was New Orleans. But for the most part, like you can just get in your car and drive, and you have a lot of autonomy over your trip. Whereas like if you go to Europe, like you might need to be with tour guides or be on buses or whatever. And so it's just a different type of travel in our opinion.
Yeah, also no currency exchange. That's nice.
That's true. Yeah, language and currency are big things. So I know a lot of people are hesitant to travel internationally right now, but there's still so much to see in our own country. So even if you can't get out and travel internationally, like drive around, take a road trip, go somewhere, even if you're just at home, like imagine how many places there are in your own home state that you still haven't been to, that you haven't seen. There's a national park or like a national monument. I don't know if it's actually a national park in Virginia that we haven't even been to yet.
Yeah, it's not a national park, but it's some sort of, it's either a state park or some kind of monument. Great Falls, is what you're talking about?
Yeah.
We've never been there.
So again, so much to see in the U.S. that's really cool. So some highlights from our trip, aside from obviously Rocky Mountain, I think was like one of our favorite national parks, and we loved Zion. We loved seeing more of Colorado. I could definitely see ourselves going back and spending more time in Colorado, a lot more to explore there.
Yeah, the mountain towns in Colorado are some of our favorites. It might be our favorite state of everywhere we've been, and probably if we were going to settle down in one place and hike a lot, Colorado would be the place to go.
Yeah. Again, Page was really cool, but I don't know if I'd go back to Page now that we've seen Antelope Canyon and seen Horseshoe Bend. Apparently they have a lot of other slot canyons besides Antelope Canyon. So it's definitely worth a stop. I really enjoyed that stop this trip. It was very nice. We also got to go to Albuquerque during the Balloon Festival, or the Balloon Fiesta, as they call it. Yeah. Have you guys heard of this before? It was really neat. We'd heard of it before, and it's only once a year. They have it in October, And it just happened to be that like it was going on right when we were passing through. It was super easy to get last minute tickets to go to that. It was really cool to see these hot air balloons up close, and you see the sky filled with them. It was a neat festival.
Yeah, we got very lucky that we just happened to be going through there, and that was well worth the stop and the cost. It was like $10, I think, to get in, $10 to park, something like that. And yeah, it was awesome. We spent probably 4 or 5 hours there watching the hot air balloons, watching them. We got there before sunrise, and they were lighting them up and everything. That was a really cool experience.
Yeah, definitely recommend checking that out. I think a couple states have balloon festivals, but the Albuquerque one is the one that we know of mostly. So definitely recommend that. And then this is our first time in New Orleans. We've been wanting to go to New Orleans for a long time. It's a very iconic place, of course. We were there on a Monday and a Tuesday. So in some ways it was good because it wasn't as crazy, but in some ways it was kind of weird because we were sort of like expecting to have this like Bourbon Street experience and, you know, the beads and the craziness, and it was kind of dead.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a bummer. It was neat to see some of the historic buildings, architecture. It's a very historic area. The food was incredible. We did not have a single bad meal in New Orleans. So it was overall a really good experience, but I will say it was pretty dirty. It was kind of a dirty city, and we didn't feel that safe there. So I don't know whether we'll go back. We talked about maybe if there was like a conference, like if the APTA ever does a conference there or something, and we were there with a bunch of friends, I think it would be fun to go back, but I don't think we're going to go out of our way to go.
I think it would be fun to go during Mardi Gras just to get that experience. But yeah, we were there in the off season and on a weekday, or 2 weekdays, so we didn't really expect it would be that crazy. And I mean, it's pretty much kind of what we expected, but I'm sure during Mardi Gras it's very different.
Yeah, but again, the food was phenomenal. And I know there's probably some more history stuff we could have done. We were only there for 2 days. But yeah, definitely a cool experience. I'm glad we got to go, and we'd never been there before.
Yeah. Besides that, we went to TravCon. Obviously, we ended up spending I think about 6 days in Vegas. We got there a little bit early. A lot of festivities. If you guys don't know about TravCon, it starts on like a Monday. I think it's a Monday, and most of the events start on like Friday. So next year we'll get there even earlier. But this year we got there on Saturday. There was a lot of stuff going on Saturday and Sunday. So we were there a couple days early, and then we stayed a day or 2 after to recover. And I would recommend that if you go. It's just a crazy party. It's just a long party with a lot of cool people.
Yeah, it felt really good to be back at a conference because our first couple years of our careers as PT, we were really focused on work and saving money. And so we never went to CSM, we never went to TravCon, we never went to any of these conferences. But after like year 3 or 4, we were like, we can afford to take some time off to go to these conferences. And then we were loving it. We were like, conferences are the best. We get to see all these people. These are all of our colleagues and our friends and the best people. And it's such a cool networking experience. And so as of like 2019, we were like, yes, like we're going to go to all the conferences. This is the best. And then 2020 hit, and then we couldn't go to any conferences. So it felt so good to go back to a conference finally and see like our people that get you, like fellow healthcare travelers. So super cool. And then again, with going to TravCon, a lot, like we've mentioned in the past, a lot of the companies host tons of free happy hours and dinners and all kinds of stuff. So you pay for almost nothing when you're in Vegas, which is cool because Vegas can be super expensive otherwise. So they pay for all your drinks and your food, and it's super fun.
Yeah, I don't think we paid for any drinks ourselves the whole time we were there. So the cost of the ticket's not that expensive. The hotel can be a little expensive, but yeah, you pretty much don't pay for almost anything while you're there as a traveler. So it was really
But it
awesome.
can be a little bit dangerous because then sometimes you drink too much because all the drinks are free. And so that's why we needed an extra day to recover. Like I wouldn't recommend just like going back to work the very next day. Like give yourself a day.
Yeah, some people try to fly out the next morning after TravCon ends, and there's a big party that night, and it's not a good idea.
Yeah, but highly recommend TravCon. We'll for sure be there next September as long as everything goes as planned and they don't have to cancel it. I doubt they will. It's always in Vegas. It doesn't change locations like other conferences do, so you can count on it being pretty much every September in Vegas, and we'll be there. We'll see you there. Nick asked, will we be at CSM in San Antonio? Probably. We're planning on probably going, so stay tuned. We're hoping to go to CSM this year in San Antonio.
George says, greetings from Virginia. George just got here for a contract. We met up with him in Vegas.
But not close to us in Virginia.
Yeah,
Virginia's a big
away.
state.
Yep. So
Yep.
yeah, hopefully we'll be in San Antonio.
Yeah,
February.
Nick, are you going to CSM? George, are you going to CSM? Who else is going to CSM? Okay, in the comments, if you're going to CSM, say yes or whatever, and then tell us also, are you going to TravCon? George went to his first TravCon. I think it's safe to say George had a good time.
Yeah.
So George, are you going back to TravCon? Tell us.
Yeah, and
Also-
CSM, hopefully we'll be there, and we should be doing some sort of meetup there, as long as nothing changes too drastically with COVID. So hopefully, if we see you guys there, we'll have some sort of cool meetup, probably a happy hour type thing.
Yeah, we did a really big meetup at CSM in 2019. There was 100 people there.
2020. We were there right before COVID.
Oh, right. It was like January 2020. It was awesome. It was current travelers. It was people who were thinking about traveling. It's people who traveled in the past. We got to meet so many of you guys in person. That was awesome. So hopefully we'll get to do that again this year. But yeah, hey, if you're watching, we would love if you would hit the thumbs up button. If you're enjoying this video, if you're learning something, give us a like on it. Okay, so besides TravCon, besides all of the awesome national parks that we went to, the other really cool thing about taking these road trips is we've been able to connect with so many people across the country, whether it was like old friends from college that we haven't seen forever, or new friends that we know from our online community that are travelers. We've met up with so many of our like recruiters. We've gone to their offices and seen where they work. That's been so cool.
Yeah,
Such an
on
awesome
this trip
perk.
alone, I think we met up with 4 travel companies, and probably a dozen recruiters from those companies. And it's cool to make those connections in real life and meet the people you talk to on the phone. That's a really neat part about doing these road trips and stopping in different places.
Yeah, it was so cool. Like I said, we met up with some fellow travelers that we knew, stayed with them in Colorado. We met up with a traveler that Jared met a long time ago when he was still a student, and now him and his wife are not traveling anymore, and they have a family, and they let us stay at their house in Iowa. We stayed with our friends, mom and dad in Nebraska, like in Omaha, who we'd actually never met before, but they welcomed us with open arms. So we had a really fun time. And then we know like a ton of people in Dallas. Like we met up with another guy who's in like the financial independence community there. And we met up with we have 3 companies that we work with in Dallas. So that was great. Yeah, it was just such a fun road trip. I mean, exhausting, but fun.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions about it, let us know. We did learn some things. So we said every year we do these trips, we learn a little bit from it, and we take that into the next trip. One thing I figured out this trip that I didn't really realize last year, traveling in the van, I think, is a really smart way to travel around the country. The way we set it up with a minivan, we still get good gas mileage, we save money on lodging. We don't spend every night in the van. We probably spend about half of the nights in the van. Other times we stay with friends, family, get hotel rooms, Airbnbs, so that we have consistent showers and can kind of reset everything, do laundry, those kind of things. But it's really cool to be able to stay in the van outside of national parks. That has been one of the coolest part about this trip and last trip. Being able to do that really helped. One thing I did figure out this year, though, there's pros and cons to the East and West Coast. So on the East Coast, there's a lot of Planet Fitnesses that we can stop at and shower, but the places that we can park the van are limited. So we normally are staying in like Walmart parking lots or Cracker Barrel parking lots or Gander Mountain or something like that, which isn't ideal. Those aren't the best places to stay. On the West Coast, there's so many great places to stay. There's national forests everywhere. We find these awesome free campsites with, fire rings and perfect places to stay. It's dark, it's quiet, but there's almost nowhere to shower on the West Coast. There's very limited gym options because things are so spread out. So there's pros and cons, and it's kind of nice that way because there's not one part of the trip that's way worse than the other.
Yeah, and when he says East Coast, West Coast, it's more like the
like
eastern
East and
half
Midwest.
and then the Midwest, like the western part of the country where things are more spaced out and it's more rural. There's a lot of land out there and there's not as many frequent cities. So we're more often in like the rural, just national forest area. And so there may not be a Planet Fitness anywhere within an hour because you're not really near a big city. Of course, when you get out to like California, Washington, and you're close to Seattle and stuff like that, like tons of Planet Fitnesses. But when you're in the middle of nowhere, Colorado or Utah, there's not going to be anywhere to shower. Now,
that's a good point. Us living in Virginia, we forget that people are from all over the country. But in Virginia, and I can probably speak for a lot of people on the East Coast, pretty much anything west of like Missouri or Kansas, we consider like West Coast. And a lot of people have never
And it's
even.
not the coast; it's just
Yeah,
western
it's just west.
U.S. Like,
and a lot
yeah.
of people from the East Coast never even go out that far. So it's like, oh, out west. And so that's what I mean when I say
yeah,
that.
yeah. So anyway, I mean, there's pros and cons to it all. Like, I never thought that we'd be living out of a van, and I don't think I could ever do it long term. Like,
No.
the access to showers and toilets is very essential to my survival. It's fine for a few weeks on a road trip, but we did a better job this time breaking it up, where we never had more than like 4 consecutive nights in the van, and then typically halfway through that 4 nights, by the second or third night, we would have a shower, which helps with my sanity. And then, you know, we've worked in a lot more frequent staying with friends, family, Airbnb, hotels. Oh, that's another important point to mention. So the first whole half of the trip, we didn't pay for one night of anywhere to sleep. We stayed all free at friends or family or free camping.
Yeah, I think that was all the way up till Vegas. Which
All the way
was
up to Vegas.
4 weeks in or something.
So more than half of the trip. We did pay for Vegas, but they do a room block for the conference, so you get like a discounted room. So the rooms are really cheap, pretty much like $125, $150 a night. But we decided to stay an extra night. This was really cool. We have a lot of like, Jared has gotten us all kinds of status at certain hotel chains and stuff
Yeah.
like that, which is usually free to sign up for their like loyalty program, and then sometimes you get upgraded.
All this happened because of credit cards. So I'm actually thinking about writing an article about some of these things, because these statuses that you can get from credit cards and you can transfer to different programs can give you different perks and
Yeah.
things that will save you money.
So we had a status match from one of the chains that we have a credit card with, like say Hilton or something, to Caesars Rewards, which is what owns Bally's and a lot of the hotels in Vegas. And so we decided we wanted to stay one extra night to recover in our Vegas hotel. And so we were like, I wonder how much it costs. So I went on their general website and was like, oh, wait a minute. It's actually really cheap to get a night like the day of, because I guess they just want to fill the rooms. So for anybody off the street who just wanted to get a hotel for the night the day of booking, it was like $50. And I was like, oh, well, that's really cheap. Like, that's way cheaper than the $150 we had been paying. Like, sure, we'll stay an extra night. So we go down to the lobby and say, we'd like to stay an extra night. And then she was like, okay, beep, boop, boop. And then she looks, that's exactly how it sounded. And then because we had like the status or whatever, we got a discount because they charge what are called like resort fees, even though it's not a resort, it's a hotel. And we got this discount. We paid $8 to stay an extra night in Vegas. $8.
Yeah, so the resort fee, that's a big perk. We have diamond status with Caesars, and all the resort fees are waived. And that's a big thing in Vegas because the resort fees can be $40 or $50 a night. And so, yeah, next year, knowing now that you might just be able to go down to the diamond desk and ask to extend your stay, and it's really cheap and resort fees are waived, we're thinking about risking it and trying to just book a couple nights and then go down there and try to extend it last minute, but it's a risky strategy.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. We could maybe at least do that for like the night that we don't necessarily need, that we wouldn't, like this time, like we didn't have to stay an extra night. But yeah, that was really cool. So up until that point, we didn't pay for anything. And then we paid for the Bally's Hotel in Vegas. And then after that, I think we only paid just a couple nights at like an Airbnb on the way back. And then after that, we used a lot of hotel points. So we went through all of we have so many accounts at this point with like Hilton and Hyatt and IHG and all the hotel chains from our credit card rewards. And we were like, oh, like what kind of nights do we have? And so I guess because of 2020, they rolled over some nights from last year, some points and some nights. So we had all these nights that we needed to use, free nights that are going to expire either at the end of this year or at the beginning of next year.
We figured out that we had 11 free nights that were going to expire in the next year. So we used a lot of those.
Yeah, so we used like 4 or 5 free nights and then a night or two of camping. So we paid for very little lodging. And Jared will write a recap post about all the expenses for the whole trip. But
yeah, the trip ended up being probably our lowest cost trip, road trip that we've ever done. And like I said, every year we refine the process a little bit and it gets a little better. We save a little bit more. We learn where we want to spend more, where we want to spend less. And
we probably spent more on food this time, though. We ate out a lot.
Yeah, we did spend a lot on food for sure.
We definitely splurged on eating out a lot. But hey, you know, it was fun. So Ryan's our friend from here and home. He says, which gym will you be joining now that you're back in town? Asking for a friend. Ryan, which gym are you going to?
He's going to Crunch. Crunch Fitness, we still have our Planet Fitness memberships, and that has been extremely valuable on these road trips. We got way more than the cost of the membership and not hotels, showers and going to gyms across the country. So we're going to keep that. We'll probably just go to Planet Fitness while we're in town.
Yeah.
And then we actually have a trip coming up that we're getting ready to leave on again.
But we'll get into that. But in general, we're not Planet Fitness gym people. Nothing against people who are Planet Fitness people. We just like to use more free weights, barbells, and stuff that they don't offer at Planet Fitness usually. So the only reason we ever got a Planet Fitness membership was for the road trip last year in order to shower. And then it's been kind of convenient just to have if we're only in a place a short time. Sometimes if we're going to be home consistently for 2, 3, 4, 6 months, we'll actually get like a legit membership for those months. But I don't think we're going to be here long enough to do that this time. So we'll just use the Planet Fitness. It was also really convenient when we took that contract in Hawaii because that was actually the best gym in the area. And I was just able to go there for free because they had the membership.
They had a better gym, but it was like $119 a month. So it was much better to pay $24 for both of us than $119 each.
Mm-hmm. So for now, we're hanging on to the Planet Fitness membership. It'll be good for continued road trips. And then we'll just see next year if we're thinking about taking a contract in Alaska next summer. I don't know whether they'll have a Planet Fitness or not, or if we'll need to do something else, but hanging out at the Planet Fitness for now.
Yep. So the road trip was awesome. We'll probably do another trip like this where we've got to figure out other routes we want to go and what states we're going to go to. We're actually thinking potentially next year doing a road trip like this, but going up into Canada and doing some of the Canadian national parks because we've seen some amazing pictures up there. And maybe coming back down through Washington, Oregon, California.
If we end up taking a contract in Alaska, then we have to decide if we're going to drive to Alaska, and that could be made into part of the road trip. We could go like through Canada, through the northern U.S., and then go up to Alaska and then drive back down. So we'll see. We haven't decided on all the logistics for that yet, but stay tuned.
Yep. We got a couple upcoming road trips. We just booked a hotel at Niagara Falls. I've never been there. Whitney's been a couple times. So we're going to drive up there, stay with some friends in upstate New York, go to Niagara Falls. It'll probably be like 2 weeks. And we're going to leave for that in about 2 weeks. And hopefully we get there before the weather gets really cold. We're planning on staying some nights in the van. We'll see how that works out. And then probably in December or January, we're going to try to do another couple-week road trip down to Florida. There's some national parks there we haven't been to. So those are our upcoming plans, and then we got to figure out our life from there.
Yeah, so we're planning on being in Virginia mostly through the holidays, but then maybe just like a little side short trip here and there, a week or two, nothing major. But we'll probably be in the Virginia area through the holidays, and then stay tuned for what might come in January. Maybe some more international travel, but we'll see.
Yep. So if you guys have any questions about the trip, let us know. We highly recommend it. If you have the time or you're between jobs or something like that, taking a road trip across the country, especially if you can, it's hard to make it work, but if you can get a setup where you can sleep in your car or sleep in a van or something like that and get to experience some of these amazing national parks and being able to stay right out to the park and get there really early in the morning, it's a really awesome experience. It's definitely my favorite travel that we've ever done. So if you get the chance, definitely do it.
Yeah, and even if you don't have time to do 6 or 8 weeks, you can definitely see a lot of cool stuff just in a 1 or 2 week trip. If you have any specific questions about like a certain region that we've been to and like what we'd recommend, I would definitely recommend anybody go and do the Utah 5 or do like the Grand Tetons and Yellowstone are super close together and a really great trip to do together.
And Glacier, if you can do those three.
You throw those three together.
Those are 3 of the best in the country.
Or you could go and do Washington and do like the 3 in Washington that are all right within an hour or 2 of Seattle. Those are a really good like trip for those of you that might be thinking about just like flying somewhere and hitting, like a 2 week trip or something like that.
Yep.
So let us know if you have any questions. Hope you guys have a great Sunday night and a good week ahead. Let us know if you have any questions.
Yep. Take care.
Bye.